What up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. I am your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
And we got a killer episode today because we're going to be going over how to stay fit with a busy job. And I think just about any job is pretty busy these days. But what inspired this episode, Kyle?
So this episode is inspired by an amazing question we got asked, and I'm going to read it here. So it says, I'm an esthetician and I'm working on clients all day long. I'm wondering if you have a podcast on how to take care of your own body as a professional. And here's the thing, this you need to consider. My body yells at me by the end of the day. So this is a really, really good question, and I'm sure some of you can relate. And I know a lot of people, especially when I asked our coaching clients, a lot of people do work desk jobs, and hey, even still, your body may actually be yelling at you at the end of the day from that. But I know for those of you who maybe do landscaping, construction, you're on your feet a lot, whatever it is, obviously, your body may just not feel exactly perfect, and we wanted to give you some tips on how to work around that, and then also just in general talk about some different tips as a busy professional on how to manage this fitness journey. Now, the first thing I wanted to start off with is just really making sure that you've developed a game plan that's going to help you and supplement what your body needs. So I think it's so easy for people who, let's say, do landscaping, you're working with your hands all day, you're on your feet all day, to just really not take care of yourself. And the thing to consider is that even though at the end of the day you may feel beat up from your job and from what you're doing, if you actually spend time strengthening those specific areas that are going to help you, such as, let's say you're using your hands all day and you've actually focused on developing a workout plan that's going to help you strengthen just your overall arms, even your forearms, like all these different things. If your back's hurting all day and you haven't really focused on strengthening it, it's only going to make it worse. And I know this is something that's very, very hard for people to hear, especially if you're burning so many calories, especially if your body's hurting. But the gym is actually meant to supplement what you're doing in life and make you better at life. And it's so easy to overlook it. So that's the first thing I want to say is make sure your training program is tailored to that, and don't let being busy and being kind of, overwhelmed with everything hold you back from strengthening your body and getting the results you deserve.
Yeah, even if you're someone who's like an esthetician, I assume is someone who is bent over doing that work at an awkward angle, and like you need to address the specifics of your job. Even if you're at a desk all day, you're very sedentary, you need to kind of look at like what that could be doing, how that could shift your body. Sitting obviously can give you a lot of anterior pelvic tilt, so from that you want to really strengthen your posterior chain, which is a fancy way of saying essentially your glutes, your lower back, and really maximizing that. And that's where everyone is so different, and that's where programming around an individual is so much more important than a one size fits all answer. Because if you're an esthetician, that's entirely different than what Kyle said of someone who's a landscaper, who's probably digging and lifting and doing really hard movements in general. And that's where I would program very differently between the both of them. But I guess my biggest tip too, and even going off of what Kyle said, would be to just be consistent with being in the gym. I find when jobs are very physically demanding, it's easy to do it for a time and then really fall off on it, especially when you are so active and you have so much going on. If you're in construction, renovations, anything along those lines. So really saying to yourself, I will make this a priority because it'll give me more longevity and it will make me feel better with my job, is going to be so key. And it can be hard to do, but if you're someone who gets real beat up during the day, and the only time you find you can get there is in the morning, get there in the morning. Be consistent with it. If you have a job that's really demanding in terms of your time, people are always bugging you, calling you. We have a buddy who's a real estate agent, and he said, hey, I feel the best when I get there early, first thing in the day before everyone's up, blasting my phone, things are going on. So by just being in there and being consistent, that is going to give you such a leg up. And then taking that a step further and being on a routine that does address the specifics and perhaps the things you're lacking in your individual job is going to be so important, because the gym has purpose. It's going to create compositional change. It's easy to feel rewarded and feel active doing construction, doing landscaping, because you are moving, but it isn't necessarily going to give you that injury aversion. It's not going to give you that long-term perhaps change in look you want, and perhaps you're not going to be like blowing up your chest landscaping. Of course, you are getting more activity than someone who's completely sedentary, but this is where you really need to say, what am I missing and how can I supplement it?
And I think this is where a lot of people struggle is they sometimes have a hard time seeing what these workouts are going to actually do for them, especially how it's going to complement their overall life. But I'm telling you, like, there's so many different benefits. And if you're someone who, let's say it's your shoulders that bother you from whatever it is, you're lifting stuff overhead, you're whatever it is, maybe even you have a kid and you're just getting so tired from that. Each time you go into the gym, when you do have a workout program scheduled, I really encourage you to not just think about how much, because it's easy to think that this is burning me out, I'm going to be more tired because of this, but instead of think of how much better it's going to make you and how it's going to benefit you in the long run, especially using the shoulder example. Every time you lift something, you will become stronger. Your shoulders will become more just less prone to injury because you've actually done this in a controlled space. And I know so many people who will be like, hey, I'm digging all day, or I'm just burning so many calories and I've worked on my shoulders all day. It is a very different thing that you're doing. Yes, you're obviously exhausting your muscles. Yes, you're pushing yourself there and it's not easy, but there's a very big difference between just using digging as an example and doing, 3 sets of 12 shoulder press, pushing yourself to, close to failure and going from there. But another thing I wanted to really consider as well is, especially from this question, I know, you had mentioned my body yells at me at the end of the day. I think it's equally as important to really also, of course, make time for those workouts, but schedule in how you're going to get that recovery in, the stress management, and everything else that's required for an amazing overall transformation, not just a physical, but also a mental and emotional transformation as well. And I think it's very easy to overlook that, especially when you have busy hours, when you're always dealing with customers, when, you're always at the mercy of others and they can just kind of control everything that you're doing. So I think it's so important. And when we asked our coaching clients for some tips, the biggest thing that every single person said that's helped them out, whether it's a desk worker, whether it's someone who has multiple kids, whether it's someone who has a job that physically demands whatever, is they always say to schedule it in. And I have so many different examples here, from Wendy to Sheila and so many of our awesome clients who said that's what's helped them during busy periods, during just a busy life as well. And I think it's so easy to overlook that. So when you're putting your workouts in, when you're putting your meditation in, your you day, when you put it into a calendar, when you schedule it in, when you make it a priority, it is absolutely amazing how much better it is. And even for all these individuals, they said getting it done first thing is so game changing. And I know we talked about it recently where we talked about different tips from our clients of how to get the morning workout in. But especially for this individual asking this question, I think it's so important to get it done when you're feeling your best, when your willpower is at its highest, versus afterwards when your body's feeling a little bit more beat up. There's a very, very low chance you'll want to work out or do things that are really good for you. And that's my honest viewpoint there.
Yeah, just scheduling is everything. And the more you can make your schedule simulated to make life easier for you. I feel the most sore when I don't work out, when I'm not in the gym. And even when I was doing a lot of home renovations, I was feeling beat up from that. Being in that gym, like Kyle said, in a simulated and safe way is so important because you're going to work all your muscles. It's your time. It's your time to focus, breathe. And even with the scheduling, if you have a day that's especially crazy, you don't need to work out that day. Use that as one of your rest days. Maybe utilize your weekends. And it's hard to give tangibles because everyone's schedule is so different, but really being aware of this. And I think also to understanding how intense your work is and programming around it. If someone's working heavy construction or heavy landscaping and then they're on a program where they're doing heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, I don't think that's the most wise because it's going to burn a lot out of you. It's going to work a lot of muscles, but it will beat you up. You'd benefit more from doing lighter isolation work, really slowing down tempos. Whereas if you're a little bit more bent over and you're doing different things, in terms of an esthetician, once again, not something I'm overly familiar with, but I can kind of guess one and two there. So for someone like that, they might get a lot because they might want to be in the gym less, and they'll get a lot of benefit and merit from doing heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, really working on postural work, really bringing that intensity. It just is so specific to the individual, and taking it outside of the gym, understanding, I guess also knowing how many days you can be in there, making sure what you're doing in there is important and is actually going to push you forward. You might want to avoid fluff volume if you're already really fatigued, and really just focus in on what you need to improve from an injury standpoint. If you're landscaping a lot, your back's going to get pretty jacked up in weird ways, and you want to counteract that by doing some postural work and really just making sure you're leveled out and even. But past that, I think a great thing you can control with a busy job is nutrition. And this is where I find most people go go wrong. I did some landscaping this year at my house, and I've known people who have done that work. It's insanely demanding. And I noticed during the day, like most of the boys would just be pounding like Gatorades, having cigarettes, just eating pizza, just anything they can, because they're so doing so much work. They just need the calories. But it doesn't mean you should go just eating garbage. And I know it is hard when you are so active and you do need so many calories to counteract that. But this is where you should be investing in having the best food you can for you. Even like meal prepping, like you could have a really dense meal of beef and great rice and really just be full from that, as opposed to just like having that pizza, because you're going to feel more recovery and energy from that protein. It's going to feel better in your system. You're going to put on more muscle. And if you're someone who's busy as an esthetician, as is this question, you can eat really good food too, and really just take that extra push in your nutrition if you are having a harder time in the gym. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. Is they'll train super hard, they won't look that great because their nutrition's not on lock. But even if you're busy, you can look into services, you can find healthy fast food that's high in protein. You can have a lot of different options to take control of your nutrition. Same if you're injured or if you have a crazy busy life or you're in a tough phase. Like, we are always in control of what we put in our mouths. Like, we have to make that conscious decision to put in trash, to put in something that's going to bring us down. And instead we can focus on something positive that is going to build us up.
Yeah, I'm really glad Josh brought that up, because I see obviously just so many different things. Even barbers, for example, they're all great people. And, I'll see a lot of times just I'm sitting in the chair and it's usually the lowest quality stuff that's essentially brought in. And I think that's where it gets a little bit tough, because you're not only beating yourselves up from work potentially, but then also you're not recovering as well. And then another thing is your nutrition's bad. And it kind of turns into this endless cycle of just like not doing anything good for you, when in reality, you should be doing everything good for you, especially to be able to perform your best at whatever it is that you're doing, and also especially your career, your job, and all that great stuff. But the last thing I will say is just, it is so important to consider what it is that you need for your current situation, for your body, for your life. And that is so important, because so many people do not consider this. Like, if I have someone who comes in here that is a desk worker and they do not move at all during the day, of course we recommend getting some steps in, walk around the office. Like, I'll give a million tips for that. But the reality is they're not as high, like they're not burning as many calories as someone that's a mailman or a waitress or whatever it is. So their program is going to be different based off of what they need. Their cardio program is going to be different. The parameters that their nutrition goals may be different based off of how much they're moving. And that's where it gets so challenging. We really do want to help anyone out there that is struggling. If you have a busy life, if you have a social life, if you just are feeling like you're lost on what to do, all you have to do is send us a message with the keyword real results to our Instagram. I promise you we will take care of you. We have a few discounted spots. Our Instagram is Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT, and we will tailor every part of this program between the nutrition, the recovery protocols, the workout routine, the stress management, and all that great stuff that you need, and really help you get to that next level so you can perform your best day to day at work and all that great stuff.
Yeah, if you're working a lot, chances are you have at least the opportunity to have an income. And the last thing you want to do is be working more, wondering if you're on the right gym routine, if you're eating the right food, trying to find these hacks. Having that accountability is just going to be game changing for you, because you might be able to work out 3 days on a super dedicated routine using high level strategies, periodization, really just using progressive overload, doing the right movements to help you see faster results with less time in the gym. And that efficiency will be worth everything to you. And just the same, if you can focus more on movements that are going to be less taxing for you in your job, but that instead will build you up and build you those habits. Also having someone to hold you accountable to getting in there, and even just defining hacks. Like, a lot of the times I'll know someone's specific work situation and I can provide them with really helpful tips. Even today I saw all the landscapers coming into Chipotle, and perhaps you're able to have that control of getting in or not, but that's a fantastic way to get in a lot of calories. I could coach you on how to do that in a healthy way to maximize that protein, to find an optimal gym time for you, to work out that schedule. And that's where our coaching service is a done for you service. We're here to give you everything you need, just as black and white, plain instructions, and to walk you through how to do it. All you got to do is reach out and put in that work. But the biggest thing, and my last and final tip, is You can absolutely be fit with a busy job. Don't lie to yourself and say that you can't because of that job. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It will be harder, but there are tons of people who do it, and it will oftentimes come down to building better habits, better structures, better systems, and that alone will get you to where you need to go. And just experiment, take small baby steps forward. Some things will work out, some things won't, but by doing that, you're going to start to see progress. You're going to move forward, and that is the journey of self-growth. So I want to thank you for tuning in today. It's a great episode. We appreciate you listening as always. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.